Hello and welcome to another episode of the Friendship Podcast with me, Jong. And we have a very, very special last episode of the year treat that's coming out in December. My December episode. I legitimately saved the best of the year for last.
Oh, stop.
One of the most sublime creatures that I've ever laid eyes on is on the couch, gonna speak with us, talk about her expertise.
You're gonna make me blush.
And what's annoying is it's not only super gorgeous, super talented, but also a nice human being. So that's annoying. It can't be all. Pick one. Stick with that. But I'm very honored to be able to speak with Cecily Starr for our December episode of the Friendship Podcast. Cecily, thank you very much for your time. Welcome.
My gosh, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for accepting the call. We know each other a little bit, and I'm very excited to know more about you. But, from the horse's mouth, tell the people who Cecily Starr is.
Big question. Cecily Starr is a burlesque dancer, a performer, go-go actor, sometimes pinup model,
Sometimes killer pinup model, yeah.
Oh, only when you're photographing. Yeah, so that's kind of what I do. That's the Cecily Starr persona.
Yeah. So the fun thing about the friends, the acquaintances that I bring to the pod is, New York and New York nightlife and New York, the art scene is as much a character of the city as the people in it.
Absolutely.
And the fun question is or the fun answer when people ask us what we do, we say our passions, we say our hobbies, but often we do multiple things just to survive the city. So
yes.
We know Cecily Starr is the burlesque performer, go-go dancer, model, right? What is the day job?
The day job is I am an actor in my real life, and also I am a registered nurse.
There you go.
Yeah, I have a friend who calls us the slash generation.
Yep.
Yeah, we're I'm a nurse slash burlesque dancer slash actor slash model.
We are all like it. It's weird how our burlesque friends, they actually think that this is my full-time thing. I do this twice a month. Right, that's my.
You need to do it more.
I should, but my reason for it, and the reason why I love talking to performers like you, creatives like you, is some people are super committed to the art form. I'm not one of those people.
Yeah,
I cannot not know when my next paycheck is.
That's how I am.
But also I am weaker than most. Like if the project I don't like and I don't enjoy, I'm not gonna do it. So
I don't blame you.
So I'm not gonna do it. So
yeah.
Even for me, this is it's a nice surprise to know that you are an actor slash nurse slash performer at night.
Yeah.
So we are like the 9 to 5. Like, what's your 9 to 5 and what's your 5 to 9?
Yeah, my muggle job.
There you go.
My muggle job.
So in more basic practical terms, how does the multiple personas, multiple jobs, multiple passions kind of like interact with each other to day? Have you had any troubles being a nurse slash burlesque performer, being an actor slash burlesque performer? How do you kind of like navigate through that particular way?
Yeah, so that's something I've kind of been struggling with. There was actually even a time when I kind of put burlesque on the back, like pretty much totally stopped doing it because I had someone who knew kind of my whole thing say like, oh, well, like if I was casting you and I like knew that you did burlesque, I wouldn't be interested. Like that would be like a turn off for me. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And I was like, oh my gosh, like how, that's not something that I had really thought, because I really think burlesque is a perfectly respectable, lovely art form.
Complimentary,
right?
Even,
And can be very complimentary actually. But it does kind of worry me, and I do try to keep the worlds separate to an extent.
Yeah.
Also coming from like a conservative upbringing.
Yeah.
I try to keep it a little separate. But it has been a little bit like you said, can be very complimentary, but can also be polarizing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good to hear different sorts of perspective in our field, because like I've never had issues with it. I have no problem when my coworkers, my bosses add my Instagram despite the risque stuff on there.
Yeah.
But I know my field. Like my field is like, we don't care what you do after. I work in tech.
Right.
So that's
Right.
it.
Right.
Right. But there are a lot, like, I've had, we know a lot of people that are both burlesque professionals and actors,
Yes.
and it's fine, and that's their brand. But I guess it is the kind of gigs or the kind of roles that you are looking at that might be riffing. So, okay, so that was like, was going to be my question, like if there was an instance that was troubling for that. But on the flip side, how has let's say this 5 to 9 passion uh, pushed, propelled, or improved upon your acting and nursing as well?
So I'm actually a very introverted person in my day-to-day life. So this being able to kind of perform as this Cecily character, if you will, has really helped me kind of like come out of my introversion a little bit. Because like the first time I ever performed, God, years and years ago at this point, as doing burlesque, I thought I was gonna vomit. Like it was, you know what I mean? Like it was the most terrifying thing in the world to me. Even though I was an actor, I've like been on stage, I've been, it's still the most vulnerable, such a vulnerable thing to do. Felt very vulnerable at the time. That I think it's helped me in my acting and even in like nursing, my just like day-to-day life, given me a confidence, being like, well, if I can get up on stage and do this, then I can do whatever.
It is also very surprising to hear how many burlesque nightlife, even like exotic dancers, super friends of ours, are like, it is a totally different person on the job versus off the job. Like a lot of the performer friends of mine are way more on the, not even like, more on like the conservative side too, more on the shy, not super introverted, but like it is more common than not. It's not 1:1, like, just because that you can take your clothes off in front of dozens of people, that's something that is like like consistent across the route. It is it's a persona, it's an act. So that's again, for me, surprising to hear from you. You're doing such a wonderful job in the few shows that I've seen you too, and of course, like all the things that we see online. So I kind of like, cool. But from there, how did burlesque get into kind of like your system? How did that became into like an interest in something that you pursued?
Yeah, so I've always been very into, since I was young, into that like old Hollywood glamour, kind of the feather fans, the rhinestones, that vibe. I've always loved that, the like old Hollywood. And I actually was in a play with a couple of burlesque dancers. It was like a cabaret type play, and there were a few burlesque dancers performing, and as I got to talking to them, I was like, you guys are amazing, like I love what you do, this is so cool. And they were like, you should do it, take a class. And I did, and it kind of all just fell into place from there.
The New York School of Burlesque?
At New York School of Burlesque, Joe Weldon did my very
Joe
first
Boobs,
class.
of course.
Joe Boobs. And I did my first performance as like showcase for that class. And there are at least one other performer from that class that still is like in the world. Tallulah Talons was in my very first burlesque class.
There you go. The giantess is it's a friend. It's a cool acquaintance. Does cool shows in the city as well. So this is actually that's another thing, a message that we can like share out there. Taking these performance dance classes, burlesque classes. It is as much an avenue for a second or a third career, or just something that you want to do over a couple of weeks, couple of months, just to kind of like unearth whatever empowerment, confidence. That's so awesome. That I didn't realize how new you are in the scene? I always thought like you're very,
Well,
very
this
seasoned.
was a long time
Yeah.
ago.
But like,
I mean, it
2 months ago. No, okay.
it was 2 months ago.
So all right, so that's cool. Like you've encountered some burlesque people in your other gigs that kind of pushed you to trying it out. But
Mhm.
more specifically, what is the etymology of Cecily Starr? Like, how did you coin your burlesque performer name?
So I am a theater kid
Mm.
through and through. And Cecily is a character in Oscar Wilde, The Importance of Being Earnest.
Okay.
So
I'm gonna pretend that I know any sort of literature.
it's a play, and
Yes.
I played the character many years ago
Mhm.
and always loved it. And so that's where Cecily came from. And
Okay.
actually, I went back and forth for a long time with the last name. And at the time, I was working for Star Restaurants. It's a restaurant
Okay.
group, and a girl I work with said that I should make that my last name.
Yeah, and
That was it. That's how it came about.
hey, hey, it's better than your first pet's name in the street that you grew up in.
Yeah.
But also start with 2 R's.
Start with 2 R's.
Stars
Mhm.
2 R's. Is that because of the restaurant or just something to be unique?
Because of the restaurant.
Oh,
Yeah,
the
that's
Star
how it's
had 2
spelled.
Rs.
Star has 2 R's. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So now I know how Cecily Starr came
Cecily Starr.
about.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then now we know how you got into burlesque. Then to round it all up,
Mm-hmm.
what is the Cecily Starr brand then? Like if you were to kind of have an elevator pitch with somebody that's going to kind of or that produces a bajillion shows in the city, you got 45 seconds. Like, what's Cecily Starr?
Cecily Starr is old school glamour meets like modern fun. Because I think
Okay.
that burlesque is it's like it can be a goofy thing, you know?
Comedy is 1/3 of what traditional burlesque is.
Right. Like there's like definitely like a silly element to burlesque. And I think that that's something I've really embraced as I've over the years is like I think like Pearls Daly is one of my
100%.
I adore her. She's one of my favorite
Mhm.
dancers. I love to watch her. I used to kitten for her a lot at Duane
Yeah.
Park. And so I would see her perform a lot.
Mhm.
And she just always had this like didn't take it too seriously
That-
kind of
yeah.
vibe. And I always was like wanted to emulate that kind of energy in my performances where it was like that gorgeous old school glamour, but
Mhm.
also like this is kind of like cutesy and can also be like a little silly.
Fits you to a T, and also it's weird how it's good that burlesque is so prevalent in big cities right now,
Mhm.
particularly in New York. That every other bar will probably have a burlesque night, if
Yeah.
not monthly, weekly.
Yeah.
But because there's so many, people are taking it a little bit more seriously nowadays.
Mhm.
People are a little bit more artistic, a little bit more dramatic, a
Yeah,
little bit more
yeah.
cause. So it's kind of good that we still have a few people that are like, all right, you know what? It needs to be fun,
Mhm.
goofy, and quirky.
Yeah, and there's
Uh,
definitely a time for the like very
Mhm.
serious, the neo versus the classic.
Mhm.
It's just I find I have the most fun in those, silly, not like comical,
Mhm.
but just cutesy kind of.
Yeah. It's good. I think I most of the time would rather fun and light than dark and dramatic.
Fun and light
Yeah,
is
it's
a
good.
good way to describe it.
But
Yeah.
this old school glamour stuff. It looks so difficult to pull off. So much hair and makeup and costume. So it's very admirable that like that's the thing that you picked, and I'm glad that you are enjoying
I
those kind of
enjoy
things.
the amount of money I've spent on costumes makes me want to cry.
It's again a lot of our passions, which is same with
Mm.
me and some of the people that has been on the same chair. It's like, yeah, we are working multiple jobs to do this job.
Oh yeah,
which
your
is so opposite.
accoutrement is expensive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But it makes us happy, so there's
Yeah.
no price tag on
Right,
that.
exactly.
And further, like diving deeper into like the burlesque and the performance persona that you have, what inspires you to build your acts, build your look, build your costumes?
So I think generally I'm inspired by like an image. Like create acts based on like a costume that I'm seeing, and that's
Uh-huh,
typically how
uh-huh.
I start it. So like I definitely have maybe like 3 costumes I put together that are not acts at this point. You know what I mean? Like I
Just
haven't actually turned them into anything.
okay.
Because I think that that's how I think because I really like that old school glamour, that's a big part of why I enjoy doing it,
That's
is that I see what I want it to look like, and then I create an act around this costume.
Ooh, that makes sense, and because of the amount of time and effort it needs to build a
Mm-hmm.
costume. But sometimes it's the opposite, right? I mean, most people will have like this. I have a song or I have like a
Right.
movement that I want, and I'll build towards that. This is actually my first time hearing about the opposite end. I have a
Yeah.
look that I want to do. Let's do that look, and then work backwards from there, and then
Yeah.
how so you have an image, you make the costume, you have the costume built, you do it. How does the music and the movement come into it, like?
So I really like to improv most of my performances because I love audience interaction.
Mhm.
I love to kind of play off of what's happening. So generally I have a couple of costumes that I've used every time I put on the costume, it's been to a different song. So
Interesting.
I kind of know my cues. Like at this point, this needs to come off, and then
Yep.
here this needs to come off, and here this needs to come off.
Got
But the moments in between are based on kind of the audience and the vibe they're
Mhm.
giving and the vibe I'm giving, and it's like a play interaction
Mhm.
between. So that is a big part of how I kind of create an act. And obviously, if there are moments where it's a specifically themed show or
Mhm.
something and it needs like specific choreography, that
Mhm.
is something that I have done. But generally, I like to have those moments of play.
Okay, awesome. Oh, again, improv is great. It's also good that at least one look, one costume is not locked to one
It's
act.
not locked, right? And that's kind of fun.
Yeah, and it has more legs to it, more life
Yeah,
to it.
yeah,
It's
it
like,
has more life to it.
you know,
Right.
if it is only a reggaeton act, so that's
Yeah.
good, at least. But also, it's like the general vintage act is kind of it's fairly malleable in terms of what you guys can do.
Yeah.
And you mentioned you've graduated from the New York School of Burlesque for a
Yes.
while. Um, what has been the most memorable gig performance that you've done to date? And memorable is open interpretation. Can be like, hey, the fanciest, coolest, or it's like,
Ooh.
I like, ate the stage. So this is very memorable to me.
It's a good question. One of my most memorable was the first time I popped a pasty.
Mm. It happens.
It happens.
just-
It happens. But I was petrified. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I was like, what do I do? And I like think about that sometimes, and I embraced it in the moment. But it was a act development workshop with School of Burlesque, actually, like a year maybe after I did my first class there. And it was a fun one. It was my like ringmaster act,
Mhm.
which is funny. It was like one of the very first acts I wanted to develop
Mhm.
when I started burlesque, and ended up being, I think, the second or third act I ever kind of
Awesome.
created. And so it was one of those where I was just like so nervous, taking myself too seriously. And then I popped a pasty, and all of a sudden it was like, well, you can't take yourself too seriously now. You kind of have to just go with the flow and figure out what's going to happen. And I think it actually kind of was nice. It helped me to like get out of my head a little bit and, have fun with it.
That's an awesome way to look at it too, because again, we people forget that various people have various reactions to
Yeah.
stimulus, right? Some people, you pop a pasty, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it pops.
It pops.
But some people, it's like, that is harrowing experience. Like, if somebody took my shirt off, I'd be harrowed. If I knew,
Yeah.
like, I want to do that. I wear a basketball jersey in the beach.
Oh,
So,
stop.
but it is it is a lesson for me, for the audience, that it can be a push to get out of your head,
Mm-hmm.
get through, and then maybe and be a guest on a podcast and share that it's your most memorable experience.
Yeah, it was definitely a memorable one.
Yeah. Cool. So we've heard a lot about the burlesque. We're a little bit on the acting end. Try to keep the line of demarcation separate. But what has on that end, what can you share that has been the most memorable gig, event, rehearsal that you've done there?
Yeah. So I went to school for theater in college, and then once I graduated, switched mainly to TV and film. But a couple of years ago, I randomly got an audition for a Broadway show and booked this play on Broadway as an understudy. But it was, thank you, but it was during COVID. So unfortunately, or fortunately, the girl playing my role did get COVID. So I got to go on for almost 3 weeks. So
amazing.
It was definitely, as someone who grew up loving doing theater, but then had kind of been out of the theater world for quite a while, it was one of the most insane, wonderful experiences I've ever had, and just kind of reminded me why I love to act, because I think the business part of it really wears you down. And sometimes it's nice to be reminded like why you got into it in the first place. We've
had a couple of Broadway actors, theater actors, and actors on the pod too, and the number of stars that needs to align to be on camera, on stage, it's insane. And then the amount of life admin on the back end to keep on either being ready or waiting for that particular break, it's also very difficult. But I am very happy that you were able to experience that. That's never going to be off your credentials now. You are a Broadway actor.
It's crazy to think about.
There you go. So, regardless of whether it's like 2 seconds or 3 weeks on your case, you're still a Broadway actor. That's awesome.
Right, it was insane.
And you went to school for theater. Come on, that's wild. That's you actually technically achieved the goal of the craft that you went to school for.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I really felt like I did, and it was I think a really beautiful play. It was nominated for a Tony, so like it was really cool.
Tony nominated
play. Yeah.
Just like I'm
What was
Tommy.
it a Tony nominated play?
No, it's like just to drop a few words tonight. I'm Tommy nominated.
Sorta, yeah. The people I understudied for were,
there
but that's okay,
It's amazing. So like this is our. That's the thing with working or being with friends and acquaintances in and around the arts fields. Like we've seen each other, but we've worked with each other a bunch. We never really sit down and talk about those things, like those details, because again, there's things to do. So I'm very lucky to be able to hear a little bit more of your story, learn a little bit more on how to kind of like react and interact with your art form. But at the crux of this particular channel, this is still a photography channel. This is still about photos. We just finished our second shoot together. Again, killer. I never have any issues with any of the looks. So, we'll share the ones that we could be shared on the screen and on the link somewhere. But I wanted, selfishly for me, but also for the people that kind of like, subscribe to the channel, listen to the podcast, is want to impart some lessons for them as well. Knowing that every photographer, every model, every subject is different in terms of attitude, spirits, and energies. What makes an awesome collaborative, let's say, project or shoot with you, right? Now, how would you what would you advise people to do or be so that the space is collaborative for good work?
Yeah, I love shooting with you. Obviously, I came back for more for a second shoot.
I'll Venmo you later.
You give, like, as someone who is not a professional model, I don't that's not my living. I do a decent amount of modeling
You're
because
very,
of burlesque
very
and
qualified
acting.
too. But
Oh, I appreciate it. But it's not my like everyday kind of thing. I love that I texted you before and said, what's the vibe? You kind of gave me lookbook kind of what you were thinking. I brought things that I thought could work with that. And then I feel like you give the perfect amount of direction to not make me feel like I'm being terrible at what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
You're not a puppet.
It's not right. It's not so much that I'm like, God, he can't let me do anything by myself, but it's enough to like give me a way in and make sure you get the photos you're wanting, So I think that's like such a good part of the collaboration is a bit of trust on both parts, that you trust me to kind of do what I do, but I also trust you to tell me when I need to switch things up.
Awesome. Yeah, and I paid her to say that. No, but it's good because, like, as again, as a photographer, some models need very, very specific directions, and I'm not that kind of guy. And some models don't want to be directed.
Yeah.
I'm also not
it's
that
different
guy.
for everyone.
Right?
It really
so
is.
I try to find like not necessarily a happy medium, but like a little bit of a give and take. I have a little area where you can do your thing. I count it down. That's just my process, so we can both take a break, but also so that my camera won't explode. Right?
That's actually really helpful. I love the countdown and then take a break, because the times I've shot and I'm just kind of like standing and like, am I still posing?
Yeah. It came about because shooting with a more medium format camera. It's bigger, has a lot more processing, so it can't do 25, 30, or it's just gonna buffer. But also for me, it's like I don't want my subject to keep doing the same thing. More, or even more so if it's not doing well. It's like if I don't like the look, let's move on to the other. So I do countdown to 8. So that's great. It's like give each other space. Space for me to rest, space for me to give direction, space for you to do your thing. But also, again, I'm gonna link below the behind the scenes of our first shoot. You will see that Cecily, it's beyond natural. It's like you say, oh, she's a natural. No, it's like it's not supernatural. Is it abnatural? No, it's like I don't know, but there's just some people that
I'm abnormal. Is what you're trying to say?
Kinda, but on the positive end. No, but it's the idea that there's no denying you're like drop dead gorgeous, but in certain art forms, particularly in photography and modeling and acting on stage or whatever, you can't just go by with physiology. There's movement, there's angles, there's expressions, there's attitude. Some people are just it. I think it just exudes out of you. Some people can work at it, and then some people fight it. So it's just like figuring out that it's a combination. You might not be the tallest, the slimmest, the curviest, the whatever, but you can work angles.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then also with photography, it's like it's a still image, so it's tough to kind of like pull out expressions all the time. So it's good that there are people that are, usually we do 30 minutes a look. We barely do 5 whenever we shoot. It's like 5 minutes, 10 minutes per look if I'm moving slow. So thank you for the advice in terms of like what makes a good shoot. Do you have any horror stories out there, worst shoot that you've ever been at? Want to share?
Gosh, I don't know that I've ever had a horror story.
Good.
I don't think I have.
That's good then.
No, I mean, none that I can think of. I definitely have gotten photos back and been like, oh dear God, like that was not cute. I did not look good. But never like during a shoot did I have like a bad experience.
And not all photos will be bangers too. So
right, absolutely. Yeah. And I have also I love that you show me the photos as we go, because I did shoot with a photographer once, and I said, can I see them? He said no.
Yep.
I said I totally respected that, but then I looked back at all of them and I was like, God, I wish you'd show me, because I would have like switched my hair. I would have this face I was making, like I really thought was very
Yeah.
cute and
Yeah.
did not like and was in so many photos, you know?
Yeah.
Just, but I'm also, you know, your own worst critic, so
Yeah.
you're gonna look at your face and be like, oh God,
Yeah,
you know?
we understand both sides. Like,
Right, I
you know,
understand
yeah.
both, but
And I also, more controversially, most photographers don't send raw shots, right?
yeah.
I send everything. I have nothing to hide, you know, and I'm confident in my shots, but also I always say, like, we only need 12, 15
Right.
good shots. If we see 50 that is bad, we got 3. So,
Yeah.
but I also understand, like, you know, sometimes even having, I have a giant mirror right behind you. I used to have it facing the model, but it you know, I found that it's more of a distraction, but
Yeah.
that's my personal style. Some, like I said, some photographers don't show the back of the camera too, because it ruins the momentum. But like, I weighed my options. I'd rather, are we aligning? Because am I seeing the same thing that you're seeing, or
Right.
are you seeing something better and different and we can work at it? So, okay, those are good notes. Maybe I communicate, like, you know, some people, be a little bit flexible, show them a little, or if you're if you or on the model's end, if their photographer doesn't want to see them, then just, you know, roll with it, right?
You gotta roll with it. It's
Right.
true.
Speaking of horrible shots, no, okay. Speaking of photographs, tell me about your most favorite image.
One of my favorite photos ever, and I told you this when I walked in, one of my favorite photos are with your cat.
Oh,
Is our last shoot. There's a photo of me just like sitting and like pointing at your, it's just, I think it's the cutest. It was like a candid. It wasn't really a,
I posted this during the few days after we shot, and I was, if I entitled something, it was going to be like the Sistine Chapel kind of thing.
Right, it was a Sistine Chapel, and I'm just thinking I'm just in love with your cat. Yeah, that's what it is. Right, yeah. But it's just this like almost this like moment of joy in between these like you know, high fashion moments, and I was like, oh, that's just so freaking cute.
2 crazy cool cats on a photo.
2 crazy cool cats.
And yeah, again, we were talking about this off pod. I am very lucky that my cat loves everyone.
Yes.
So it's, you know, and you know, she's a little bit of a ham. She wants to join photo shoots.
Yeah, she wants to steal the show.
Yeah, but she poses, so at least like we can, so, you know, at least she's not gonna run away if somebody touches her or likes her. So she's a good prop. She's also a good model. And we in this in this most recent shoot. I already saw in the back of the camera about a couple of just her walking around while you were like,
really?
doing a badass shots. Would be super cool. So, all right. So I will post those shots of Cecily and Whiskey, my cat, so you guys can see and what we are talking about. And it is also one of my favorite shots. You know, again, it's always good to have a super beautiful subject. And Cecily in a particular
right. I mean, Whiskey is top tier model.
But yeah, so we've gone through pretty much everything that I've prepared for this pod. I just cannot thank you enough for like your time. I just try not to be too greedy and ask you to shoot like every day because it's so easy. But I really do appreciate you coming. I really appreciate the collaboration work. Looking forward to seeing more of you out there. So speaking of that, you know, tell the people where people can find you.
I'm on Instagram, Cecily Starr with 2 R's, burlesque. Cecily Starr Burlesque is my Instagram handle, and you can find all my contact website and stuff there. So give me a follow, and I can't wait to shoot with you again.
I'm looking forward to it again. And for those people who looked at the thumbnail of this episode and went, whoa, haha, me too, that's Cecily. But again, the Fun Shoot Podcast is my monthly podcast as part of Jong TV. I do, I film a lot of New York nightlife performances, sideshow, burlesque, drag, comedy, musicians, just to share how cool my friends are. I'm not cool, but they are. So we're going to use them for content. But also, I review stuff, camera gear, video gear. I also love sharing behind the scenes of my shoots so that you guys can see how you can work in a tiny space with limited gear, right? That's the important thing. And this particular podcast is, again, conversation with light shapers and image makers so that selfishly I can learn to be better, get to know my friends and acquaintances a little bit more, but more importantly, share how awesome they are with you guys, and it cannot cap 2024 any better than with Miss Cecily Starr for this particular episode. So thank you, Cecily.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys, and we'll see you next year. Bye.